This video is kindly sponsored by Tobii. Star Citizen is built from the ground up to be experienced from a first-person perspective, whether you're on foot, in your ship, or floating around in space. Because everything can be experienced from your character's eyes, the Tobii eye tracker was an obvious purchase for me. Witnessing firsthand what's happening in the verse helps to show a sense of scale, of wonder, and, as overused as the word can be, it genuinely applies here, immersion. The Tobii eye tracker capitalizes on all of that, offering a natural way to further immerse yourself in that world, not to mention providing another control method to add to your hands and potentially feet. I'm Forrester, and this video will share a little more about the Tobii eye tracker 5, including key features useful for Star Citizen, in-game settings and setup, some of the different use cases for the eye tracker including in different master modes, and some questions frequently asked by viewers. The video will also briefly cover the Tobii Ghost and camera boost features. All of these portions of the video are timestamped in the video description in case you're looking for something specific. But first, it's important to talk about what it means for this to be a sponsored video. So, first of all, I purchased my eye tracker long before I had any sponsorship or affiliate arrangements with Tobii. I purchased as a paying customer and have always been very happy with my purchase, hence why I feel so comfortable to work with Tobii and showcase their eye tracker for you. This video content is formed of my own thoughts and I've not been sent a script to read to you. And for those who purchase a tracker through an affiliate link in the video description, it gives a small amount of commission to the channel for every purchase. So that's all the transparency stuff. You can decide if you think this is a biased video or whatever, but I think many of you might be interested in finding out more, so that brings us to the key features of the Tobii eye tracker 5 in Star Citizen. When it boils down to what the Tobii eye tracker 5 will do for you in Star Citizen, the two key functions are head tracking and eye tracking. Head tracking plots your head in physical space, giving 6 axes across pitch, yaw and roll, as well as X, Y and Z positioning for Star Citizen. That means that your head in-game will move to map to the direction it's facing in real life. There are some smart algorithms that adjust that a little bit so that you can obviously still see the screen, but the Tobii software makes that feel very natural to do. Look to the left and your head points left. It's worth adding that as you move your head in-game, your character model also moves their head, something you can actually see when in third-person view. Tobii also have a piece of software called Tobii Ghost, which shows an overlay of where you're looking. It's useful for situations such as this where you're trying to explain the system to somebody. The feature will be covered a little more later in the video, but from now on when you see this overlay, you know it represents where my eyes are currently pointing, which is the second key feature that the eye tracker provides, as the name would suggest, eye tracking. The Tobii software feeds that to the Star Citizen game engine for use cases that benefit from it. Setting up the Tobii eye tracker is pretty simple. There's a mount that attaches to the monitor, although Tobii do have an optional tripod bracket available now. The eye tracker snaps magnetically to the mount and then plugs into a USB port. For the sake of simplicity, I have it plugged into the USB port on the monitor itself. It only takes a couple of minutes to set up the hardware or to calibrate the tracker. If you ever change screen or move position, you recalibrate, but that's also just done in a couple of minutes and simply involves looking at some dots on the screen until they pop. Once all of the setup is done, you just forget about it. It's there, ready and waiting for when you launch your game. Setup in Star Citizen is also very easy, as native support for Tobii is baked into the game itself. You can choose to fine-tune all of the different sensitivities, and I've included my settings on the screen, but the most important thing is to make sure the head tracking is actually enabled. Also in the settings is a feature called Camera Boost. It's a feature added in Star Citizen patch 3.23, which adjusts or accentuates head movement depending on where you're looking. For example, looking left whilst moving your head right reduces the head movement. It's usually enabled by default, so for those starting out with head tracking, it makes the most sense. offering the most natural way for the system to work. Otherwise, most of my settings are the default setup simply because it just works for me. The one thing that is worth considering, however, is making sure there are a couple of keybinds set to make life easier. Having a handy hotkey to enable or disable head tracking is helpful for those times when you want to take a sip from your coffee cup or check another screen or chat to somebody who walked in the room without your character view in-game going haywire. A quick toggle button works wonders for such situations. The second keybind I recommend is to recenter the tracker. There is some clever stuff that goes on in the background that optimizes the tracker over time with your play session, but sometimes if you get up for a bio break and come back, you might be in a slightly different position, so I like to manually recenter the tracker in such instances. I also have head tracking enabled while seated and during FPS in the settings menu. I don't always use head tracking whilst walking around, especially whilst you're still getting used to it. It can feel a bit disorienting, but I like having the option, and I instead use my enable-disable keybind to quickly decide if I want the feature on or off at any given time. In terms of what you might use the eye tracker for in Star Citizen, there are 4 primary use cases for me. The first is combat, where having the ability to look around a dogfight is incredibly helpful. Seeing targets around you, keeping your sights fixed on an enemy target that isn't directly in front of you, it's incredibly helpful. It's quite difficult to explain how useful this is, but it means you're much less likely to lose your target and have a much better situational awareness of where it is in relation to your ship. It's also great for target management. Simply looking at a target will put it under your crosshairs, and then you can tap to lock or pin and move around to the next. In bigger furballs, it's also very helpful to be able to quickly switch targets on the fly. Also in a combat scenario, missiles are wonderful to use with the Tobii eye tracker because you can quickly and easily fire off bore sight, so a target off to the side of the fighter is still potentially a viable missile target, and as it maneuvers around, all you have to do is keep your eyes on the prize and the missiles will stay on target. It's a really neat feature. The second use case is in conjunction with the recently launched ATLS tractor-beam platform. Sometimes when lifting the largest of crates, the crate can block your entire view, making it difficult to see where you're placing it down. With the Tobii eye tracker, you're alternatively able to look to the side to decide where to put the crate, which makes the ATLS much more usable. It may be something that gets improved in future patches, but the concept of having an additional vision axis proves useful in such situations. The third use case for me is for flying near obstacles. Usually that's taking off or landing, but might be an asteroid field or in a canyon on a moon. Being able to look around and physically see any obstacles or dangers around you is incredibly helpful for building your spatial awareness. It's something you do instinctively in the real world, so being able to do that in the game world improves your ability to fly and operate your ship in first-person view. And that brings us to the final use case for me, and that's simply immersion. I know, it's a bit of a buzzword amongst the Star Citizen community, but there's something to be said for being able to feel part of the game world, and being able to track head and eye movement has a huge impact on that. Sunsets, for example, often look great in Star Citizen, but when you're able to enjoy them all the more by peeking left and right to see the full panoramic spectrum, well, that's something else entirely. There are some other use cases, for example racing, mining and salvaging, although I tend not to use the Tobii eye tracker personally as much for those use cases, so we'll reserve judgment there. The Tobii eye tracker tends to be more useful in the SCM master mode such as weapons and flight than the navigation modes, but it's also individual to your preferences and how you prefer to use it. Over the course of my various gameplay videos, some of you have asked some different questions about the eye tracker, so I'll summarise some of those answers here. I've had no problems with low light performance for the Tobii eye tracker 5, it's worked great for me in the dark. Interestingly, it's also worked great for me in bright sunlight, whereas other head trackers I've used in the past have struggled. It's actually one of the reasons I originally bought the Tobii. I've used the Tobii eye tracker with a curved display without any problems. I've also personally used the Tobii eye tracker on much bigger screens than are officially supported. The Tobii webpage at time of recording says that the recommended screen size for eye tracking isn't bigger than 27" for 16:9 and 30" for 21:9, whereas for 16:9 I've used a 32" curved and 44" display, considerably larger than the recommended specification, with no problems at all. Perhaps it's because by the time you add in the space for my joystick and throttle, I'm sat quite far back from the screen. Anyway, the official line is that the recommended max is much lower, but my personal experience of using the equipment beyond those recommendations has worked fine. Finally, the Tobii is much more convenient than other solutions I've used. I've used things that sit on a baseball cap, things that clip to your headset, and it's always added a bit of time to getting set up and ready to fly. The convenience of the Tobii eye tracker is that it just always sits below your monitor, silently waiting, ready to go at a moment's notice for you to fly. Incidentally, it can also work as a sign-in device for Windows Hello, if you're that way inclined. I did say I'd mention Tobii Ghost, which I've used in this video to show you where I'm looking. I don't ordinarily use this software, and unless you're a content creator, you might not too. A lot of Twitch streamers use it because the overlay support is really good over there, but essentially, the majority of use cases lie in being able to show somebody else how the system works or what you're looking at. There are also some niche use cases for using it yourself to optimize your gameplay if you're really at the cutting edge, to check, for example, if you're looking at the right things at the right time, but if you're a fairly chill gamer like me, you might not use it, but it's good to know that the functionality is there. In summary, the Tobii Eye Tracker 5 adds a lot to your Star Citizen experience. It's quite hard to explain just how impactful it can be to bringing the game to life, to making things easier to see, easier to control. It is a premium product and accordingly can be quite expensive. That's really not unusual for premium hardware, and it's not uncommon for Star Citizen players to be looking at other expensive hardware, like joysticks and the like, but I'll acknowledge that price can be a factor. That said, you might want to follow Tobii, and me for that matter, on the various socials, as there are often discounts and promotions running which can help you snag a deal, for those of you who might be interested but want to save a little on the upfront cost. At time of recording, there's a discount of 15% running, for example, that can help save a chunk on the price. That's running from the 11th to the 28th of October 2024, as well as a sweepstake with some goodies on offer, such as Star Citizen starter packs. The links for those are in the video description for those watching before 28th of October 2024. Incidentally, whilst this video was primarily to talk about the Eye Tracker 5 and Star Citizen, I've also used it for many other games that I enjoy, including F1, Microsoft Flight Simulator, and DCS World. At time of recording, a total of 176 titles support the Tobii Eye Tracker 5, so if you're interested, maybe don't assume that you'd only use it for a single game. In closing, you don't need a Tobii Eye Tracker to enjoy Star Citizen, in the same way that you don't need a joystick or any other fancy hardware. But you certainly might want one to boost your experience. Once you've used it, you might not want to fly without it. I know I wouldn't. Thank you again to Tobii for sponsoring this video. It's a pleasure to work with sponsors when you're already passionate about their product to begin with, and it's a great support to smaller channels like this one. If you have any questions or want to share your own experiences, I'm right here in the comments section as always. If you found this video helpful, you might press the like button, or I guess the dislike button if you think I'm just a shill, although I disagree heavily given how awesome the Tobii Eye Tracker is. But otherwise, and as always, thank you for watching.